Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. It is Monday, December 13th, 2021. Getting closer to the end of the year. And, that's just the way it is. Getting closer and closer and closer. Nothing we can do to stop it. In a way, I want this year to be over. I have, other things to do and stuff planned for 2022. It feels weird saying that. 2022, doesn't it? I mean, gosh, that's I was born in 67, so that's a long time ago when you think about it. 2022. Yikes. Nothing we can do to stop it. However, I have some things planned, and hopefully 2022 has a better start and a better run than 2021. We can all hope for that, right? It is a chilly day here in Georgia. It did get up to around high 50s, but the temperature, of course, is dropping, and that's fine. It's the way it is. At least there's no snow, and thankfully there's no tornadoes coming through Georgia right now. I know a big section of Kentucky and Arkansas and whatever, all the connecting states there had that huge tornado come through. So if anybody is out there, I hope you're safe. I know that there's several people from those areas that get on here on a live stream, and I hope that you're safe and sound. Just devastating. And we need to be grateful and thankful for the things that haven't happened to us, right? I'm sure there's many people affected by all of that. I've seen some video footage, scary stuff, just destruction as far as you can see, and it's just terrible. So my heart goes out to all of those that are suffering in that instance. I know there's loss of life, which is even worse. But gosh, it's going to take some effort to try to rebuild all of that. And we can only hope for the best in that sense. So with that said, I'm glad you're here. We're going to talk about a variety of things tonight, but I did put in the subject of the title for the YouTube video in particular. What's the best car ever made? So think about that. And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Let's see who is here today. And right off the bat, Jerry is the first one in. He beat Terry today. So I'll give Jerry a bell. Good evening to all from Middle Tennessee at the Money Pit. Thumbs up, please. Yes, or thumbs up, yes. So yes, please. By all means, throw a thumbs up on there. Terry Keithley, good evening, everyone. Please give a thumbs up. Yes, congrats on a new member to your family. Thank you, Terry. Yes. Granddaughter arrived Friday morning, actually. Friday morning. My daughter and I had scheduled C-section. So we have a little girl now, little granddaughter, 7 pounds, 7 ounces, 20 inches long. Beautiful. All the fingers and toes and all that stuff. Pretty exciting. So they have a pair now. They've got a son and a daughter, and I think that's probably where they're going to stop. But thank you for that, Terry. Bob Knoll, good evening, everyone, and good evening to you, Bear. Thank you, Bob. I'm glad you're here. Crash Rider, thankful to be able to say good evening from southern Indiana. Fortunately, no damage to us from the massive tornado that struck Kentucky and other states this weekend. Well, that's good to hear. That is good to hear. But man, the images from that just crazy. I don't know what would be worse. But if you have a tornado, which we know is tremendously damaging, in most cases, a hurricane, which is a wet tornado in most senses of the word, hitting the coast, or one of these massive fires. I don't want to go through any of them, but to survive that sort of thing, any one of those is in some cases miraculous. And I know this thing they had was just crazy huge and traveled like 250 miles on the ground. That's crazy to think that tornado touched down and traveled about 250 miles of destruction. It's hard to believe. Ray Buckman, evening all. Glad you're here, Ray. Rick Stevenson, another great evening with Joe Daddy's gang. Glad you're here, Rick. Bob Shoemaker, evening from Oklahoma. I hope everything is okay there. Richard Byrne. I'm going to say Byrne. Good evening, everyone. Glad you're here, Richard. Jack, good evening, Barry. Still drilling spot wells. Man, still drilling spot wells. Woo. You need a better drill, man, or a grinder. You can grind some of those out too. Grind the tops off, take that body chisel, pop things off. Jerry is saying, oh, Bob, what part of Oklahoma? Okay, so he's checking with Bob. And Robert is here. Evening, all. Glad you are here. Dawn from Dawn's Manufactory. Good evening from wet, windy Portland. The Christmas tree and lights are up and shining brightly. Awesome. Good for you. Ray, dang, you're young, Barry. I don't know. So I don't feel as young as the numbers may dictate. I can tell you that. I can tell you that putting my time in the military, when you're young and 10 feet tall and bulletproof, you can do just about anything. And you don't realize that down the road, you're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for that. It's like the guys that play football. You have some people that play football in high school and college and go on from there, or they may never get past college, and then time goes by and they pay for it. So I'm at a point now where I'm paying for it. You can ask my family or whatever, when I get up off the chair or something and I put pressure on my feet, my ankles sound like Rice Krispies popping. Just all kinds of crunchy sounds. So, yeah. But I'd still do it again. I would still go in the military. Let's see, Dawn. Snow coming Wednesday for us. Yeah, I don't want any snow. Bob is something Jerry. Okay. Ish. Hello, everyone. Glad you're here. Robert, mid-70s here most of the week. That sounds very nice. Bob. Oh, so he's talking to Jerry Cushing about midway between Tulsa and Oklahoma. Okay. Ray, Kentucky got hit hard, bad stuff. Yes, I have relatives in Kentucky. And as far as I know, they didn't experience anything. They live around E-Town, Elizabethtown. I don't know exactly where, I think Louisville got a little bit. I don't know for sure. But, yeah, it's just, it's crazy how much damage there was. Jeff, awesome, man. Thank you. Appreciate that very, very much. Awesome. That is great to have. Wally, good evening, everyone. 48 hours so far since wind took out power. Latest estimate, 12 tomorrow to restore generator going steady. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear you got at least a generator going. And this is something I wanted to talk about before. And maybe this is something relatable to the whole tornado and stuff going through. Because when it rips out power lines and just destroys everything, you could, if you lose your house and you do have a generator system and the house is gone, it doesn't really matter, but there's something that I've been looking into, and I would like to purchase one of these at some point, but now there are some really nice electric generators. I say electric because they operate off of solar power. It's basically a battery that stores power. I've been looking into these off and on, and they've come a long way with what they can do with these things. But the beauty of it is it can be charged off of a regular house current. It can be charged off of solar panels that you buy with the generator. So basically you can plug this thing in, and there's a variety of brands out there, but really impressive what they're able to do with these things. And I'm really considering getting one because I have a generator. It's a pretty good size generator, portable type thing. But the problem is, what happens if there's no gas? Can't run the thing without gas, or it gums up with junk or whatever, then you have to fix it. These new electric ones that are solar powered, much more feasible, let's say, to use in emergency situations, I think. But anyway, Dave Conville, good evening, all. Glad you're here. Fishing live stream, first time here. Well, I'll give you a bell for being here for the first time. This is I do this on Monday nights at 7, Thursday afternoons at 3, and for the most part, we try to focus on talking about cars. But we also get off tangent on occasion and may talk about a variety of things, from movies to food, all kinds of stuff. But I'm glad you're here. Hope you enjoy it. And if you have a question, something about a classic car that you want to ask, please ask away. Ish, congratulations, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we are very blessed to have 2 healthy grandkids right now. Steve, greeting from South Central PA. Glad you're here, Steve. Hope all is well. Dawn, best car I ever owned was a Prius. Next would be the Caravan 3L, 3-speed auto. Both cars, 150,000 with tires, tune, and oil. Okay. Well, I get that. So you're saying the best car, is it the best car ever made though? Or the best car you have owned? There's a difference there. So I'm glad for the input though. Next will be the Caravan 3L. I don't know what the 3L is, but I'm assuming it's Dodge Caravan. I'm assuming. I don't know for sure. Harvey, hello Barry. Congrats on being a grandfather again. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that very much. Dale, hello from rainy Northern California. Well, glad you're here, Dale. Hope all is well out there. Shane, had to kick COVID's butt, but I'm back 100%. I kept up on your videos. Awesome, Shane. I am glad that you recovered from COVID. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Terry, Barry, were you ever by Benny's first chance, last chance? It was in Muldrow Hill down from Fort Knox. No, I never actually served up in Fort Knox area. I mean, my family is in that area, but no, I'm not familiar with Benny's. Benny's first chance, last chance. Have to tell me more about that. I'm not familiar with that. Charlie Seidelman. So asking for a friend, I noticed a modern power plant, but a 5.3 in a Tahoe has no oil pressure. Motor was pulled due to a suspected bad lifter, all replaced, but has a new oil pump. Okay. Interesting. So you have no oil pressure. So you're talking about with a gauge, like an actual pressure gauge hooked to it, or the digital readout? Like if you put it in the vehicle, they're not fluid driven anymore; they're electronic. So answer that first. Is it actually, showing up on the gauge, or is it, let us know. Give us some more information on that. And Charlie, also evening all. Thanks. Thinking of all affected by the devastating weather event, and congrats to you and yours, Barry. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. Yeah, it's, whew. I mean, I was thinking about it today, and I put a video on Patreon today talking about things going on in my life and our family and all that stuff. And, tomorrow our daughter graduates from college. Youngest child, Joe, which is where Joe Daddy's comes from. But yeah, she graduates from college tomorrow and starts her career teaching, which is awesome. So hopefully all goes smooth tomorrow and beyond that. Fishing live stream. Thanks for the shout out. I'm restoring a 29 Pontiac two-door sedan, more wood than metal. LOL. Gladys is helping me and says hi. Awesome. 29 Pontiac. That is cool. I restored a 31 Model A. That was my grandfather's car. That's what's in the image on the live stream thumbnail. Maybe that's what brought you here. I don't know. But 29 Pontiac, that's cool. That's cool. You don't hear about them very often. From that era, 27 to 31, Model A's dominated. They were the car because they sold so many of them. So that's cool. That is cool. Doyle, got a car question. Remove the hinges on left side to replace. No paint from factory underneath. Do I paint body color or just rust proof with some rattle can rust stop after primer? Just, you can put anything on there. You can paint them if you want. It's not going to make much difference at this point. As long as there's no rust, or if it had some rust, you cleaned it out, treated it, or sprayed some epoxy in there or something. These cars didn't have, they put the hinges on, just sprayed. They didn't really have paint underneath there, but anything you add will be beneficial. I've done it before where I've taken rattle cans, like the light blue Mustang that I did years ago. I didn't have the color I wanted to spray yet for the body. I took a rattle can, sprayed underneath the hinge. It was blue. I figured at least if it was blue, it was close enough because it'll be, covered up when I do paint it. because I paint with the doors on, get in the jams and everything. But I just sprayed some rattle can paint on it. Anything is an improvement over nothing, honestly. Good question, though. Thank you, Doyle. Charlie, under the valve covers, it's dry. Okay, that's not a good sign. That is not a good sign. So let me think about that a second. You should have, if it's not getting, because I would think, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that it still has a push rod system where it pumps oil up the push rods, and into the top of the valve covers, or the on top of the valve cover. I've worked on one of the 5.3s. I had to replace a couple of lifters, and I'm trying to remember. I can't remember exactly, but I know in the old small block Chevy, you'd have a hollow lifter or hollow push rod, and it would pump fluid basically through the lifter up to the top of the rocker arms and stuff. But if it's not getting oil up there, you've got something else going on. Now, you said it had a new oil pump. Does it have the oil pickup tube on it? Simple question, but very good question. Or is the pickup tube messed up? Got to think about those things, because you have to assume the pump is rotating, from, I believe they still function off the camshaft. I don't know for sure on those. However, I would think, first of all, is the oil supply getting picked up by the pump? And then from there, all the cross bore and stuff that the fluid gets pumped through. So, whoops. Dave Conville says, wow, 29 Pontiac, impressive. Yeah. I mean, they have to look very similar to a Model A, but I can say from the Model A experience, the Model A's remain very kind of rudimentary in their function, because that's all they were. They were like cheap transportation. And you look at some of the other brands, whether it be Dodge or Pontiac or Oldsmobile or whoever, they put more effort into the cars. They made them much nicer overall. The Model A it was very, very, very simple. But the other cars added more features and had more options. So I don't know what the 29 would have had in it, overall, but that would be pretty cool to see. So maybe we'll get some pictures. You can send me some pictures if you want, and I can put them right here while we're talking. Let me know if you want to do that. I can send you you can send me an email, and I can send you I'll post my email, then you can send me pictures to that email, and I can put them up on here. Anyway, Ish, maybe it's not the best, but the most iconic has to be the 57 Chevy Series, in my opinion. Yeah, I would say you're not wrong with that. The 57 was an iconic car. Yeah. To me, out of those, I like the 55 better, but I get it. 57 was a very iconic car. I think when I asked the question, what was the best car ever made? I guess that's how I labeled it, right? I think that's how I labeled it. What's the best car ever made? It's really hard to answer that question, because you have to give it some parameters. I opened this up on purpose. I wanted to have a wide open kind of discussion on this. The thing is, you can't pick necessarily one car. You could say maybe this was the best car of this generation, or this was the car that did the best X, or the best Y, or the best Z, right? And here, of course, most of us on here, we have several may show up from other countries, but we're going to think about cars here in the United States as well. Primarily, that's just how we operate. But I was going to tell you my first pick, in a sense, is the Model A. Is the 28 to 28, 29, 30, 31 Model A. Best car ever made, because, and this is just one category now, because it really created the car market. You look at how it was made, why it was made, how it was sold, how cheaply it was sold, and just to give you some numbers, the Model A, I actually looked this up, produced from 1927. Sorry, I keep saying 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. Last production was March of 32 for the 31 Model A, which my Model A that I have is a late production 31, which means it's probably made in 32. They made, now think about this. I don't know what the population of the country was. I don't know. But they made 4,858, I'm sorry, 4,858,644 Model A's. Now, that is not just one type. That would be the Model A, I think the whole series, whether it's a coupe or sedan or roadster or truck, the whole generation of Model A, as they're called. You talk about, kind of almost flooding the market with vehicles. And they were tough things. They were durable. They held people and goods and products, So that is one of the cars that fits that little niche, let's say, because they were just that prolific. They were everywhere. And you could still find them today. Think about that. My Model A is 90 years old, and they're still pulling these things out of barns today. You can still find them, still coming out of barns and storage areas that haven't been driven in 50, 60 years, but they're still here. And also, how many of those went through the scrap system for the war effort? Think about all the cars we lost and stuff that was scrapped just to provide armament and all that stuff for the war effort. So anyway, the Model A is one of my cars in that fits that category. Let's see, Terry. Benny's was a bar. Heard they tore it down. My ex was from down there. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. But not familiar with that at all. Charlie, yes, oil pickup tube was removed, cleaned, and reinstalled. Okay. Robert is saying, I was thinking pickup tube as well, either missing or loose and sucking air. Yeah, it's very possible. Very possible. Dave, I think the biggest challenge with the Pontiac will be chasing parts. I agree with that. I agree with that very much. Let's see. Shane, one of the best cars ever built would be the original Pontiac Tempest GTO. They had power, comfort, and great design. That is a good point. And I think that was what the original muscle car. So you get some points for that. The GTO and was it DeLorean? I think DeLorean designed it. And I think it was DeLorean. He was taking it out and racing it and challenging people and challenging hot rodders. And they were like, wait a minute, this is like a family car. So that's a good point. That is a good point. I think, again, that was the beginning of the muscle car era. So let me see what we have here. Oh, yeah. Ish sent me some pictures. So let me see if I can. Whoops. I'll pull up these pictures from Ish. Because, again, different cars in different time periods would have had been more considered, the best, in different circles. So just to show you this, if it'll pull this up real quick, hopefully. Chug. All right. So Ish, yeah. I mean, yeah, you can't beat the looks of a 57 Chevy. Now that car looks really, I know it's a 4-door, but it looks short. Maybe it's just the angle of the picture. It almost looks short in a sense. Because people were doing that too. They were taking these cars and cutting the doors out and turn them into mini cars. Like they would section out the back half of the car and you'd end up with a little short kind of hot rod thing. But yeah, that's a cool car. It is. Now, Robert, you're hitting another mark for me. I'll give you a bell for that. The Checker. Now, a lot of people don't know. I guess some don't know. The Checker cab was made by Checker Car Company, and Checker Car Company started. I looked this up too because Checker is another one on the list. 1922 was the start of the Checker Car Company, and then it developed into, of course, the Checker Cab Company or whatever. They produced cars from 1922 to 1982. So that was the last year for those cars. Now, what's cool about the Checkers, I think it was 60, I think it was 62, maybe 62. No, I want to go back before that. It was in the mid 50s, I think. Yeah, mid 50s when they come out with the iconic Checker cab that we see in imaging. If you looked up the Checker Cab Company or Checker Car Company, you would see that they, prior to that, they had all kinds of designs that were similar to the Model A stuff and different things like that as time went on. I don't know how often you ever see one of those things. Again, we talk about the Model A. Everybody knows what a Model A is in that time period. But if you were to say a 1925 Checker, I don't know what that looks like. I couldn't identify it. You know, it's kind of like there was a vehicle called a Whippet and just all kinds of oddball names. But Checker kept making new designs or changing their designs. But the cool thing about the Checker cab, there's a bunch of cool things about the Checker cab, and I just kind of highlighted some things that I saw. From my understanding, those vehicles were designed to go 1,000,000 miles. Yeah. Now, I think they said when I was reading up on the statements on taxis in New York City, where they're mostly seen, they're talking about, what did they say? Hitting 70,000 miles every 6 months, I think. Yeah. So like 140,000 a year on vehicles is what they're getting. So the life of a cab, if you made it 3 years, you were pretty good. They've had Checker cabs that have gone 700,000 miles. I don't know if any of them actually made it to the million, but they say they were designed to go 1,000,000 miles. Those things were designed to be tough as nails too. Like, I didn't realize this. The front and back bumpers were the same. Think how nice that is. You don't have to. You just put a bumper on it. Doesn't matter. Front and rear, same bumper. It had a perimeter frame with an X in the center for all the abuse of the roads and carrying passengers and all those sort of things. It was wider. The rear door opening was bigger. You could actually step into this cab instead of like fold yourself into a cab. And I think they only had 6-cylinder engines in them, if I remember right. But really impressive designs that lasted and lasted and lasted. So just pretty impressive. So we'll have the Checker cab is another one on the list. Fishing, we'll send you pics, also following you on Instagram. Okay. Well, I don't know if you have my email. So there's my email at the bottom of the screen. If you want to send me some pics, cool. That would be awesome. Jordan, hey Barry, 5.3 LS motors have an O-ring between the pump and sump pickup tube with a TSB for failing might cause that problem. Worth pulling the oil pan to check. Okay. So there you go, Charlie. I see you saw that comment. That's good to know. That is good to know. Thank you for that. Good answer, Jordan. Okay. Good. And Ish, yes, we got the pics you sent me. Cool. Dave, I'd go earlier with the pick for the Model T for all the same reasons as A. Plus, it was the first vehicle that was marketed to the masses, not as a luxury or novelty, but a tool for everyday life. Yes, I get that. I get that. But I think, and I agree with that. But when it became a creature comfort type of transition, the Model A was so much of an improvement. We all, those of us have seen it. The Model T is like, you better have a Rubik's Cube to figure out how to drive it. it was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And they improved a lot of that and made the Model A so much better. But yeah, the Model T, I don't know what the production was, but they made millions of those things too. So, a good point, Dave. Good point. Doyle, I think the iconic 49 Oldsmobile Rocket V8 with the first V8 with overhead valve. That's a good point. That is a very good point. I'm trying to think. Yeah, 49. Okay. And I have to take your word for it on the 49 being the first overhead valve, because I don't know for sure, but that makes sense. That's a good answer. Good answer. Terry, how about the 57 Studebaker Hawk? That's a good answer too. I think, because I love Studebakers. We all know that. I think the problem with anything Studebaker is, while they were, I won't say it was the best car made, but the Studebakers were generally ahead of their time. When they got into the 50s, they were about 10 years ahead on the products, as far as cars. So I like what you're thinking, but I really think it's difficult to put that in a best car ever made category, because while they sold a bunch of them and they were cool cars and kind of hot rods in a sense and all that, they didn't hit the masses like other cars did. The 57 Chevy probably outsold by 10 times. I don't know. So it's, it makes it difficult to put it up in there, but I like the idea though. Robert, my dad was on the list to buy a checker wagon years ago. Had to give it up when he moved to Hawaii. Yeah. Those things, I'm telling you, they were built like tanks. Jordan, no problem, Charlie. I believe GM released a revised seal in response to pickup tube seal TSP. May want to make sure your friend installed the revised seal. There you go. Good answer. Thank you for that. Ray, having owned a multitude of cars over my 64 years, for me, iconic 53 Corvette, 55 T-Bird, 65 Mustang, Fastback, 55 Chevy Hardtop, and so many great cars from that era. Yes. And again, like I said, I opened it up when I said best car ever made. So you hit several marks on that. The 53 Corvette, no doubt. That created a whole different approach to the car market. 55 T-Bird, 55 Corvette, very similar cars in their design, but the Corvette, I think the original one started off with a 6-cylinder, and I don't know what year they went to the V8 exactly, maybe 55. And I think the T-Bird started off as a 6-cylinder as well, and I don't know what the options were for those. 65 Mustang, yeah, that opened the door again for a whole new angle on these cars, and the Fastback, of course, the Fastback, and 55 Chevy Hardtop, and so many great cars down there. Yeah. Like I said, there's this is an open question. There's a lot of cars that can fit certain brackets that we go through time. Rick, Duesenberg, double overhead cam, 4 valves per cylinder, supercharged in 1929. Yes. That's another one of my favorite cars. The Duesenberg. I mean, again, amazing cars, engineered way ahead of their time. If you took like you're saying, Duesenberg 28 double overhead cam, 4 valves per cylinder, supercharged in 29. And in the meantime, people are chugging around in, Model A's. Model A's. You can't even compare the two animals in that sense. Amazing though, and it's a shame that Duesenberg went out of business, because in a sense, I think they may have been like the American kind of Rolls-Royce car company. Just beautiful, beautiful cars. And there are other ones in that same era that didn't quite make it. The Cord and just the Auburn, didn't quite make it, but they were all had a play in the automotive world for sure. Ish, you can't forget the VW Bug. Yes, yes, yes. That is a great answer. I think the VW Bug, if I remember, has had the longest production run of any vehicle like ever. Now, I think what year did the first Bug come out? It had to be 39 or something like that. And I know they kept producing them in Mexico, I believe, up into the 90s, something like that. But they quit producing them for the United States or whatever. But they had this tremendously long production run with very little modification to the design. They had the split window and they had the little pop out turn signals that went on the side of the car. You'd flip a lever and this thing would pop out of the A pillar or B pillar. And there was, some cool things that they had in all that. But very little changed technically over the years for the Volkswagen. So that's a good answer for the Bug. Yes. Rick, it's a doozy. Yeah. Yeah. And, those cars are bringing $1 million now. Jay Leno is a big fan of those cars. Rick Stevenson, Cord, first production front-wheel drive car. Yes. And while that is cool, again, if I go back to my primary question, best car ever made, well, you could put it in a category, best front-wheel drive car ever made, original, whatever. You could narrow it down. But yeah, they had some interesting, cool stuff going on with those cars. Again, hard to find. Rare as can be. Robert, I have tried to erase the VW Bug from my memory. Okay. Well, I'm sorry you have issues with the VW Bug. But there's no denying its place in the automotive world. Let's see. Rick. Beetles went out of production in Mexico in 2003. See? Thank you, Rick. Great answer. But so I think was it 39 when they started? Was that correct? I think. Nope. My phone's buzzing. Brian, hey guys, just got here, but let's not forget the Willys that, according to many historians, helped win the war. Yes. So you're talking about the Jeep, the first Jeep. That's a great answer. And I think, and maybe my mind is not correct. I don't remember exactly. Didn't Ford produce some of those? Or wasn't Ford involved with producing Jeeps in that time period as well? I thought. I can't remember. Somebody may have to look that up. But that is a great answer. Yes. You can't deny the Jeep, the original Willys Jeep, as being a great vehicle. And, again, one of the paths that we are going on where it says greatest vehicle or greatest car ever made. Robert, Chrysler Airflow, which is making a comeback. I remember the Chrysler Airflow. I think that car, wasn't that one they overbuilt the thing or something? It was started off, the design was ahead of its time, I think, if I remember correctly. I know that I remember seeing something about it on TV, like the design was ahead of its time, and I can't remember what all they did crash testing on it and all kinds of stuff that was way ahead of certain things. So I'll let you fill me in on that. Don, yes, a Willys Jeep, yes. Well, like I said, I do think that Ford had a hand in maybe not designing it, but maybe producing it, because everybody was producing stuff. Studebaker was building trucks and aircraft engines. The B-29s, a lot of B-29s had Studebaker aircraft engines on them. So they didn't design it, they built it though. So there's other places where they built things, but it was all the same kind of design, or from the same design. Robert, pushed it off a cliff and still worked fine, way ahead of its time. Yeah, I knew they did some sort of crazy damage testing on it, and it survived. Um, and I'm trying to remember the whole parameter for the airflow. Um, I can't remember. I know that the grill was unique and there's a variety of things. I'm not sure if they called it airflow because of air flowing over it or air flowing through it. I don't remember. But it was a unique car. Shane, if we look at foreign cars, the 66 Maserati 3500 GT inspired the later designs of the Datsun 240, the Mazda RX-7, and several others. That is a good point. That is a good point. And I can't argue that. I really can't. There are, foreign cars that fit into this market, this question as well. We could easily, label Maseratis or Ferraris or, and pick ones from those generations. It's kind of like what was it? The Sebring, I think isn't that what the Cobra, right? Wasn't the Cobra based on a Sebring or something like that? It wasn't, Shelby didn't design the Cobra, the body. He just took a body and made it a muscle body, made it a muscle car. So anyway, Ish, not sure if this counts, but how about the Tucker? Yeah, now the Tucker, which if anybody's saw the movie or any of the information on the Tucker, it fits a certain, again, a little narrow path on this. What's the greatest car ever made? I think what Tucker did overall, the amazing design that he had, would it have lasted? Would it have been the big seller that he had hoped it would have been? I don't know, but he pushed the envelope on what we could do with cars by putting in safety features and stuff like that, and making it a better car than what seemingly what the big three were putting out. So he was again ahead of the too far ahead, let's say, in what was going on with it. And you can look at the movie and see how they portray it, whether it's accurate or not. I don't really know, but yeah, it's an amazing car. Phil checking in. Hi Barry, hope you are well. Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm still snapping and popping and making all kinds of noise. Robert, Citroen 2CV. I've heard of those, and I've seen the Citroens, but I'm not overly familiar with. I guess they were mass produced. That was probably the big thing, right? That was the wasn't that a car that was like half fabric or something? Again, one of those kind of odd things, but I think they produced a lot of them. Brian, I can't say for sure, but I don't think it was called Jeep till later production. It seemed like it was called the Willys Overland or something similar. Yeah, Jeep was coined, if I remember correctly, Jeep was coined by the soldiers that drove the vehicle because I forget what the nomenclature was, but it was like general purpose vehicle or something. And they kept saying general purpose, and then it became just GP, get the GP, go get the GP and bring it over here. And then GP became Jeep. So you can see how that grew into that. But yeah, it may have had, again, been the Willys Overland, and then it became Jeep. Rick Stevens, Cobra's built out of an AC Bristol. There you go. Well, thank you. I know the Sebring was similar looking, but yeah, that makes sense. Let's see, Robert. The Cobra was made by AC in England, and Shelby was the U.S. seller of them. Simplified story. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that. And Robert, the Citroen was a car of the people type thing that was meant for paved roads and farmers' fields. Interesting suspension on them. Yeah. Well, they also had I think the Citroen. Now I don't know what generation of Citroen, if it was all of them or not. They had because I remember my dad talking about these. To change the tire on them, you could hit a button and it would pump up the rear suspension, and then you would put a block of wood underneath and relieve air pressure or something, and the axle would pull up, and you could unbolt the wheel. You never had to have a jack. You just had to have a block of wood or something to lift the car. So kind of cool. Bob, Jeep started in 1941 as Jeep Overland Motor Company in Ohio. Thank you, Bob. Yeah. And that thing, look at the whole market that spawned, not just in the military, but the whole. And probably if you take Jeep alone, you can compound what it has created. I doubt that you would have had International Scouts. I doubt that you have had the Ford Bronco. I doubt you would have had Chevy Blazer. I doubt you would have had the Toyota Land Cruiser or whatever. I mean, they may have been on that path, but the Jeep is what kind of set the standard. And a lot of people, oh, we can build that. We can do something similar. And the thing is, they're still modifying that design today. I know there's I can't think of the name of it, but you can buy a brand new, almost like a scaled down version of the Jeep. That's not street legal. Technically, it's not street legal. I think it's made in India or something. And it's got the same looks as a Jeep body, the old style Jeep bodies. And, there's still people generating these things. So you can probably even go far as to think about, if we talk about military vehicles, stuff like the Deuce and a Half and the 5-ton, the iconic dual axle vehicles that were moving troops and weapons and food and supplies across everywhere in multiple countries. There's still many of them in operation today. I've got friends who actually have a military 5-ton that they bought, and they are, drive them in parades and different things like that. And you look at the over engineering of some of that stuff that they had, and it's just impressive what they were able to come up with. Now, we can also, you can pick out certain cars that, again, triggered a wave of hot rods and different things. The Mustang started a generational thing, and that turned into the Camaro, right? And then the Camaro turned into the Challenger, in a sense. The cars had their big muscle cars in the late 60s, and then they started to do a whole different thing with the longer nose and the shorter back end, and turn them into muscle cars and hot rods and stuff like that. So the Mustang really gets credit for creating the other cars made by other car companies. Robert, the Jimmy, yeah. We're number 7 in line, Jimmy. With a TV commercial where that woman's on the phone trying to talk to somebody. Rick, Jeep, the original SUV. Yep. Well, actually, we probably maybe not can go that far. I don't know if I would call it the original SUV. If you go back, way back in time, I'll give credit to Chevy Suburban, right? Chevy Suburban the Suburban has the longest, I think in the history of automakers or manufacturing, the longest name that has continued on a vehicle over its life. I don't know exactly what year the first Suburban came out, but it was a SUV type of vehicle, like 4-door. Well, in the 70s, it became 3 doors, but the Suburban name kind of hung on to it. So if we think typically of an SUV, I think we kind of lean towards a box vehicle with a hard roof and stuff on it. Just the way I think about it. The Jeep is a little bit different in that sense. Later on, of course, they did create the enclosed Wranglers and stuff like that. But yeah, the original, like Suburban, like I said, if you go back and look at the first production Suburban, might fit that category. Robert, the old Jeeps are still made in India. You can buy new bodies, etc. from there. Okay. Thank you, Robert. Brian, you're about my age, Barry. Weren't we promised flying cars by now? When were we in grade school? Yeah. Yeah. Where are the flying cars? Willie, Roxo is a old Jeep lookalike, not street legal. Okay. I couldn't remember the name, but yeah, you can buy those things now. And you think about it though, you can make those street legal. You can. I think they have to be inspected. I don't think they have airbags and stuff in them, but I think you can technically make them street legal now. But you compare one of these newer ones to one of the old ones. What's the difference? I mean, what's the difference? You got little smart cars, and you got tiny, like my little Honda Fit. It's a little car. Granted, it's got airbags and drives good, but compared to an old vehicle like the old Jeep, these modern stuff, the modern copies have to be somewhat of an improvement, you would think, or I would think. Dave, I think it's probably your service, Dave, because I'm doing pretty good, I think. Oh, Roxor. Okay, Willie says Roxor. Okay, not Roxo. Okay, thank you for that. Ray Buckman, 1933, first Suburban. See, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you, Ray. And that name has been used for a very long time. Obviously, still a line or a name they use today. In fact, I can't remember for sure, but I think American Motors had a Suburban as well. I think it was a Rambler Suburban, and I think it was a station wagon. So there were other companies that use that name, but Chevy, I think, fully owns it now. Third Stall Garage, hey Barry, joining late. Good to be here. I'm glad you're here. Shane, International Scout was kind of the first SUV. Rotted apart in 2 years, though. Yeah. Wait a minute. Maybe a bell for that. Yeah, and see that. I mean, as far as that goes, the 4-wheel drive part of it, and being an enclosed cab or box, yeah, I would get that. And what's funny about that too, International Scout, and I've mentioned this before. At the junkyard, let me just go ahead and I'll do another junkyard story time. I've talked about it before, but I'm going to talk about it again. We had an International Scout that my dad bought somewhere. He would find vehicles all over the place, and he bought this thing, and it was there. Like when we brought it home, it still had the fenders on it and the cowl and the A-pillar, and the quarters were on it, but I don't think there was ever a top on this thing. And I remember that it was a 4-cylinder. So it was an early 60s International Scout. It had a 4-cylinder engine in it. It had like 12 shifters on the floor. You had you had a 4-speed, you had a high range, low range, 4-wheel drive. I mean, you had like all these levers that you could move all over the place and do different things with it. But International Scout, they used to have a commercial or slogan that said, "Anything less is just a car." Fantastic slogan. Well, this particular Scout had a cracked block. Okay, it would not hold water. Didn't matter what you did; it was cracked. Well, we would use this thing around the junkyard, and we drive it, and it's of course 4-wheel drive and all that, and it didn't take long for what was left of it to basically fall off of it. They were horrible about rust, especially up north Pennsylvania. So the the back of the car, back of the Scout fell off. The quarters fell off. That there's no tailgate. There was nothing except a flat pan where the back area would be. There were no doors on it, but it kept the front fenders and the hood. And we would use this thing around the junkyard all the time. We built a box or something on the back of it to hold stuff, and so we could drive it, and we would actually take it off road and go kind of four wheeling in the woods. And what would happen though, because it never held water, you would chug along, and it would lock up. It would get hot, and it would lock up. Well, then we would walk back, go back to the house or whatever, and you go back the next day, and you hit the key, and the thing would fire right up. It would cool down, and it would start functioning again. But we changed the logo, the expression. Instead of anything less is just a car, we said anything less is just a frame, because that was about right. Okay, that's enough for the junkyard story at the moment. Brian, what they called a carryall at some point, the Suburban. They may have been. I know that may have been expressed as a carryall, but I think Suburban was kind of if I remember, Suburban has been the longest running name, but carryall was involved there somewhere. Donald, hi Barry from Jeanette, Pennsylvania. Glad you're here, Don or Donald. Ish, what do you say about the Amphibicar? That was a creative adventure, or venture, I should say. The Amphibicar, I mean, well, let's say it was the greatest. We could say it was the greatest floating car ever made, I guess, right? People are still buying these things up and restoring them and taking them out. Apparently there's clubs, that take these things and go on the lakes and different stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. Again, a narrow little line on the big questionnaire, but yeah, I get that. All right, so Dave's back. Okay, Bob, Suburban generations were 35, 41, 47, 55, 60, and say 12 generations, nearly 90 years. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, I mean, that when you say Suburban, everybody knows what a Suburban is. Now, again, I want to say that Rambler or AMC, somewhere in there had the Suburban name on a vehicle. So it was a shared name at some point. I'm making that statement. Somebody can back me up if they want. Somebody can back me up on that, because you guys got a great group going over here. Okay. Now there's again all kinds of these categories. I think you can go way back in time, and again talk about the greatest car ever made. I know I saw this on Cars That Built America or whatever, and I can't remember the exact name. And I'm sure it'll hit me at some point. But like the first cars, the very first cars, they had they were basically a wagon with a tiller handle up front and a little wheel up front. And you had like a big flywheel that they would spin and get it moving. And I again, right now the name escapes me, but I've seen that on videos and stuff like that. And there's still some around, but you have to give credit to one of those, because again, that kind of kickstarted the idea that, hey, we can build these things, we can have a gas powered or fuel powered. I think back then they didn't have gas. They had another name for it. And it wasn't exactly gas. It was something similar that they used as like a cleaning agent or something. But the, ish horseless carriage. Yeah. But there was, I want to say Mercedes, but it's not Mercedes. The one there was an American version. I think Mercedes actually started with those, and somebody in the States made one. And And the point being, this person, it was Daimler Benz. Okay, and maybe that's what I'm thinking of. They did this whole thing where the wife or something drove this thing. I forget how far across country or across the state or something. Had like her kids with her, and she would drive so far, and they'd have to get more fuel because it had like a little gas tank on it. They can only go like 30 miles or something. Pretty amazing story behind those first vehicles. Yeah, it wasn't actually kerosene. It was something similar. They had a different name for it. Something back then. I don't remember the exact name. Brian, just be controversial. I'll vote for the 71 Pinto. Well, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. The 71 Pinto is kind of an iconic car. And it started again a whole nother generation of the small car market. Now, some of that was because they had to, right? Gas crunch and all that junk. But it kicked off the whole little 4-cylinder, 4-speed cars, which gave us all kinds of like little Datsuns, the little Toyotas, the little Hondas. They were all coming in, ahead of that. But the Ford, I think that was really the first one to make an American 4-cylinder little car. And of course, that led to the Vega. Dodge had the Cricket, and I think they were just imports. They weren't actually made by Dodge. So, just kind of, I get that. I'll give you a bell for the Honda. I mean, the Pinto. I'll give you a bell for the Pinto. Sorry, I lost my thought there for a second. And Rick's Daimler Benz, yes. Her Scrambler. Good evening, all. Glad you're here. Robert, the first cars delivery trucks were electric. Yeah. Now I don't know what the range was on one of those things, but yeah, they were electric. You're right. Rick Stevenson, 1883, I believe. That sounds about right. Dave, Plymouth called their station wagon the Suburban through the 70s, along with the Chevy Suburban. Okay. I'm still thinking there was a Rambler version or something. AMC, but yeah, I get it. That I do remember the Plymouth as having that name as well. So thank you for that. Okay, we said kerosene. No, it wasn't actually kerosene. Davis says, I think you're thinking of Duria. And that may be right. And paraffin? No, I don't think it was paraffin. Brian says that was a joke. Well, but the point being, it actually did kick off a whole market. I mean, you're not wrong. That's the thing. You're not wrong. Shane, the 71 Pinto, anything less is just a bomb. Yeah. I think they've actually disproved a lot of that. I mean, I don't think it happened as often as everybody wants to think. The media jumped on it. Kind of like they jumped on the Chevy trucks with the saddle tanks, talking about them blowing up and catching on fire from a side impact. I've actually seen where they had a news program that tried to make it happen. They could not do it. They crashed a couple trucks, and finally they put fireworks in to make it explode because they couldn't get it to catch on fire like all the scary stuff they were telling us. But ish 71 Pinto, I just threw up in my mouth. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great car, but again, it created another path of our car market. And Bray says those are great with a small block Ford. Yeah. Yep. Naphtha. Yeah, I don't think that was it either. I think Duria might be the right answer that David said earlier. I think it was an odd name. Doyle, Nash Metropolitan was small, 4-cylinder, older than the Pinto. That is true, but it was also smaller than anything. Did they even have a back seat? I think they did. but I don't know how you get you don't put like half a kid in there or something. So that's a good point, Doyle. Yeah. Ray, the Nash Rambler Suburban. Okay. See, I knew there was a Suburban with Rambler or somewhere in there. Robert, the Dodge Caravan had a big impact on the market and led to the current SUV. That is, that is a valid point. And you can now even take that a step further back. The Lee, was it Lee Iacocca who come out with a K car, right? You may not want to think this, but the K car was probably the greatest car ever for Dodge. Honestly, you could talk about the Superbird and the Super Bee and the Challengers and Chargers and whatever, but the company was dying. The company was collapsing. It was going to fold. And they created the K car. And I think everybody ended up with a K car at some point in their life. My mom had a version called the Dodge 400, and it was a little, two-door small car. They saved the company. And the K car and the Caravan were in that same kind of bracket, the Caravan, and I know you put SUV, but I'm gonna. It did lead basically to, well, the minivan market exploded with those, but the current SUV market, they were, they're four doors. They actually have doors on them, it seems, whereas the Caravan had sliding doors. A little bit of a difference, but you're right. It did help grow that whole market. Rick, I bought a Pinto new in 1980, had it until 2003. Yeah. I mean, they served a purpose. Let's see. Tattoo. Electronic valves are the future. You know what? You're not wrong. And they're working on it. Look up Koenigsegg. You familiar with that? Are you familiar with the supercar? I think it's Koenigsegg is how you say it. Konescig or something. They are actually working on electric valves on their race engines, and it's coming. It's coming. Good point though. Ray, the MG and the Triumphs were great little cars. Also, yeah, I mean they were cool little cars, and my impression of those though is not. I mean, yes, they had their purpose. They had their place in this car world. I think the only thing that makes them kind of fail in my mind was they rusted. We had the junkyard, and we had some MGs and Triumphs, and they were all just like rusted to pieces. So I don't know what their shelf life, what how long they're supposed to last. But we ran into that a lot with that they would just rot to pieces. Right. And the Carmen Ghia. Yeah. Yeah. The Carmen Ghia was also another unique one. I know we're kind of going on different tangents now, and that's fine. That is fine. We can just talk about cars. There was the Carmen Ghia, but there was also a, Volkswagen had the iconic Beetle. They had the Carmen Ghia, which convertibles and hardtops, whatever. And I remember at the junkyard, we had some stuff that was kind of odd, like Volkswagen station wagons. You ever seen one of those? Like a legit station wagon made in the 80s or something. I can't remember the number code. I want to say it was a number something. But we had some of those, and they had a rear section, kind of like the Corvairs, it had the engine in the back. The Volkswagen station wagon, you could lift up, open the lift gate or whatever, and then work on the engines in the back. But I can't remember what the name was. But I know we had at least one up the junkyard. Koenigsegg also had an auto trans with no gears, basically just a torque converter. Yeah, I mean they're really investing in the whole market there. I watched the whole video series on their electric valves, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. Her Scrambler, a 1970 electric utility company in Wisconsin, bought a bunch of four-wheel drive Suburbans. They were around for many years. Yeah, this things they lasted. They were pretty tough. Rick, Sir Charles Lucas. I don't know what we're talking about there. Prince of Darkness. You lost me. Sir Charles, what are we talking about? Bob, I saw Electronic Valve Expo at 1995 PRI show and was impressed. Yeah. It's really cool technology. And Rick, do you know why the British drink warm beer? They have Lucas refrigerators. So I don't know what that is. I don't know what you're talking about with Lucas. Yes, a Type 3 station wagon and the 441. See, my mind was telling me 411, but I hesitated. Thank you for that. I hesitated because I was thinking, is 411 right? Or is that a Porsche? And then the 911, right? The iconic Porsche 911. But yeah, the 411. We had one of those up the junkyard. Shane, Ford dropped the Maverick too soon. People put 351s in them and they were fast. Ford wouldn't do the gas crunch of early 70s. That's a valid point. That's a valid point. I don't know. I'm assuming. I'm assuming that some of them came with V8s, right? Maybe not 351s. Maybe a 302 or something like that. It was bogged down with emissions junk. But yeah, they had V8. Didn't they have V8s in them? I'm sure they did. Charlie, Type W. Could be. And Ed, VW is squareback. That could be the same car. It could be the same car. Lightning Rod from the interweb. The 1600 squareback sedan was VW's first U.S. wagon. Okay. Whoops. Thank you for that. Sorry. Got a message on the side. Rick Stevenson, British cars were Lucas Electrical System. Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't. Not familiar with them, but thank you. Robert, Lucas made electronics for British cars and their stuff was really poorly made. Okay. Now I'm getting it. Her Scrambler, Ford Grabber 302. Yeah. Yeah, I had to grab her. Okay. So I mean, I guess you could build the 302 just like we do today. But I'm assuming putting a 351 obviously would give you a little more giddy up, right? Ish, don't forget the VW thing. That is a good one too. I've worked on one of those in my life. Again, very unique vehicle. Very unique vehicle. Ray says yes, the Grabber. Yep. And Brian, yes, the Maverick had a 302 option. Okay. Ed Cucciarella, Lucas switch off, flicker on. Okay. All right. Oh boy. We're gonna show you a picture. I think I'm gonna show you a picture of the 29 Pontiac. Let me see if I can get this pulled up here. Because these cars, I mean, all these old cars are cool. All these old cars. So Fishing Live Stream sent me the pic, and we're gonna pull it up right here. Boom. And see there, that's again, you can say, oh, it looks similar to the Model A, and it has the same kind of design. It had wood overhead, just like the Model A did. But one thing I noticed right off, at least it appears that I'm seeing this right, that the door fits flush with the quarter panel. The Model A's, the door overlapped the quarter panel and the window opening. which is kind of a weird thing. They that looks like it's a little more streamlined, or at least it should be. And I'm not sure. It looks like the door is slightly out of adjustment, but obviously it's just mocked into position at this point. Does that have wood spoke wheels in it? It looks like it still has the wood spoke wheels, at least from what I can see. You can fill me in. Let me look at that if I can enlarge this picture on my screen. Okay, that looks like wood spoke wheels. I can enlarge the picture on my computer while I'm discussing this, but so is there a story behind it? Is there something that a reason you picked this car? Is it got a family history? Is it just something you found and decided, you know what, I should rebuild that thing? Yep, blue profile pic reminds me of it. Okay, good. Brian on Musty One channel, he once had a VW Beetle camper factory made. Yeah, that's an interesting whole interesting bracket of vehicles when you start going off on that kind of tangent as well. You know, the camper stuff. If you really want to talk about some oddball things, there is apparently in the Chevy had a Blazer. I don't know what year. I'm thinking it was in the 80s that had a camper built onto it as a production vehicle. And apparently they're worth a ton of money right now. People are just can't find them, but they want them. And I can't remember the name of it, but they had a Chevy Blazer, you know, the square body Blazer that had a camper built into it or onto it. Pretty cool. Okay, fishing says that they are wooden wheels. Okay, send me a pic of the wheels. Okay, barn find in Bluewater, Ontario, Canada. Interesting. So rather than call you fishing, I'm going to call you Roy. How about that? Can I just call you Roy? Just call you Roy. Don, the Chevy Chalet. Is that what it was called? The Blazer camper thing? I've looked them up a little bit, and it's like they were cool, but I don't know what the production was on them, but they're really hard to find. Really hard to find. So if you find one of those in a barn somewhere, it's worth some money. Brian, Chevy Vega had a camper version. Interesting. Yeah, they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff in the 70s, weren't they? You know, like the Pinto wagon had that little moon window and a quarter in the back. I forget what they called that one. It was a special name for that Pinto. Robert saying the VW Beetle with the fifth wheel hitch and camper. Yeah, I'm thinking there was another one that was like the a VW. Where was that? What was our statement on that? I'm thinking that VW Beetle camper was more of a like camper with a VW nose on it. I think. And the VW Beetle with the fifth wheel was a whole different animal. Yeah. You know, it's crazy. You think about some of the crazy stuff people have built, either whether it was a factory design or, you know, some sort of custom thing. We could talk about another brand of car that you could say, again, best car ever made, whatever. Think about the Chevy Monte Carlo Aero Coupe. Okay. Now, I'm not saying it was the best car ever made, but that car was a design that had only had one purpose, and it was aerodynamics. And they built those cars for production, right? So you had the Chevy version and the Pontiac version. And I think there was even an Oldsmobile version, I think, all of which are fairly rare. But that kind of changed the racing scene for NASCAR. When they started coming out with those, because prior to that, they still had a flat nose and a bumper and a grill and stuff like that, and then they started making these cars more swoopy. So that's another one. It kind of, in its own certain way, created another path, let's say. Okay. Oh yeah, the VW camper. We were talking about a pop-up one. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. I forgot about the because we actually had a couple of those at the junkyard that had the elevated upper section where you could like lift it up, and then you could put like a sleeping area up there and stuff like that. I forgot about that. I was thinking of like the boxy camper type of thing. But yeah, we actually had some of those at the junkyard. I'm sure they got crushed. Dawn, a Pinto, something like Freedom Wagon or Leisure. Yeah. They had a couple, and then of course 1976 they had certain cars like I forget what AMC, they had their Rebel series where they painted red, white, and blue, and stuff like that. Hearst AMC Hornet had a camper version. Interesting. I did not know that. Give you a bell for that. I guess some of the stuff we'd have to Google it up, because I'm not going to be able to do that. So Roy has sent me a couple more pictures. You talking about the Mini Cooper? Yeah. The original Mini or the later version BMW Mini? Because I know that the old Mini Coopers, if you ever watch any racing, like road course stuff, those little cars were evil on the track. I've seen races where they have you'd have a Corvette racing those things, and all of a sudden the Mini Cooper would outhandle the thing through the curves, get a lead, and then the Corvette would catch him on a straightaway, and then the Mini Cooper would beat him through the curves, and Corvette would catch him on a straightaway. Pretty fun to watch that stuff. So Roy has sent me some other pictures. Whew. Yeah, the 29 Pontiac, that you had a vision there that would be hard to see. Wow. Okay. And there's a shot of the wheels. Yeah. And I'm sure it's hard to find parts for that. Dave didn't know that. I'm not sure what you didn't know. Sorry. Oh, Robert says the real Mini. Yeah. Those are cool little cars. No denying. Those are cool little cars. The original Italian Job with the old Mini Coopers. Yeah. Yeah. The new Mini Coopers, they're okay. I mean, of course, it's got all the safety features now, airbags and ABS brakes and, crash protection. You were living on the edge with a real Mini Cooper with the original stuff, But yeah, like I said, if you had a race version that was tearing up the track when it raced against, full-bodied cars, big cars. So pretty cool to see that. Let's see. Lightning Rod. GMC also made a truck and factory camper called a GMC Jimmy Casagrande in 76. Okay. Well, that's what I was talking about. The Blazer camper deal, but there's a Jimmy version. And I don't know what the production number was on that sort of thing, but gosh, it would be near impossible to find one of those, I would think. I mean, I've seen some pictures of them and stuff, but really just they couldn't have made that many. And then what happened to them? Where did they end up? That's that sort of thing. Ray didn't know about the AMC Hornet. Okay. Ish, I sent you a pic of the best car ever. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll go with that. I can't argue that. So this is Ish is saying this is the best car ever. And let me give it a second to load up. There we go. Yep. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we could actually do something like that? Dave, 1929, a real significant year for Pontiac. It was the first year for the iconic split grille that Pontiac kept through its lifetime. Okay. That's some good information. Shane, got to go. Everyone hit that like button. Yes. Thank you, Shane. Lightning Rod, low production numbers on the Blazer campers and very desirable. As you mentioned, there is a website dedicated to them. You know, now I can tell you that, again, growing up in Pennsylvania and having the junkyard, I saw lots of oddball stuff come through and either get crushed or resold or parted out or whatever. I can tell you I never saw one of those. Never saw one. And I mean, I've seen some really weird stuff come through, but I never knew they even made such a thing. So I don't know where they must have sold them out west. I'm thinking they must have been more out west than anywhere. But again, I can't say that the people where I lived would have had much use for them. Because I don't know how many people went camping or would have used it as they intended. I kind of think somebody lives out in Wyoming or something might want one of those. So I imagine the market was quite small for people to buy them. But there were certain cars out there that, while we can look at them and go, that was a flop, or that was just a really bad idea. And there's plenty of those out there. But the reality is some of those cars actually helped us improve other cars later. We talked about these with this Lucas electrical system and stuff like that. Well, maybe that led to better electrical stuff in other ways. Not that it makes it any easier for people who had to suffer with those bad systems. But sometimes you have to have those failures before you have a success. It's like, you're talking about the Maverick and how they never, put a 351 in it or stuff like that. And you look at some of the stuff coming through out of the early 70s and how they tried to manage emissions, or they weakened the engines. You'd have I forget what some of the ratings were ridiculous. You'd have 150 horsepower out of a small block or something, just really choking those things down in an effort to reduce emissions, which it didn't. It just, it's made a mess of things. But again, stepping forward out of that, they work to improve from that major stepping stone. So that's why we have, the cars today that easily get 30, 40 miles to the gallon, low emissions, all those sort of things. Robert, I think the Aztec was probably more like the beginning of the SUV era. Ooh, I was hoping you weren't going to bring up the Pontiac Aztec. I was really hoping you weren't going to bring that up. That's one of those where it's like, this was a bad idea. Let's just run with it. Yeah. I think they did a show on what's the one where they drive around cars all the time? Like, there's three guys. I can't think of the name of the show. Rutledge is on it, you know. Let's see, Robert, ugly on the outside, but inside was a nice car. Well, they took one of those. I think I'm pretty sure it was an Aztec with it like had a camper option. Apparently, you could put like a tent on the back of it. Yeah, Top Gear. Thank you. But they did a show where they took 3 cars and they had to go out and abuse them like they do, and then they threw some paint on them and took them to an auction and were selling them. And I think the Aztec, I think it actually sold for more than what Rutledge bought it for. But of course, he put like a lift kit on it and bigger tires and all kinds of goofy stuff. But yeah, the Aztec, I guess it served a purpose, but it really didn't appeal to people. It was too weird out on the outside. It says drove pretty well, lots of room. Yeah, I never was in one. In fact, I can't say I've seen one in like 10 years. Lightning Rod, a 76 Chevy Blazer Chalet camper sold for $125,000 earlier this year on Bring a Trailer. That's insane. That's insane. I don't know how they can justify it. You could probably build one of those for less than that. I mean, literally. But I guess if it had the paperwork or had all the original junk inside and whatever, might have made it worth it. I don't know. But that's crazy. Ray, yes, the gas crunch really killed HP numbers, at least until new technology created the LS and the Ford 50 and the 6.1 Hemi. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, now we're producing cars that make 5, 6, 7, 800 horsepower. Again, crazy. Are we actually benefiting from that? Doyle, my 76 Mustang 2 Carmen Ghia 4-cylinder was weakest car ever made, top speed 74 miles per hour. That's sad. That is sad. Michael, hello. Anyone have a good serviceable set of serviceable? Blah, blah, blah. Anyone have a good serviceable set of GT40 heads? Looking for my 289/331. I don't know, but we can leave it up there for a minute and see if anybody does. I don't know. So if anybody can help Michael out with a set of heads, let me know or something. We can put out some emails. I'll leave that up there for now. But yeah, there was, I mean, just some really, really odd stuff up there. Yeah, Rick says my aforementioned Pinto topped out at 104 miles per hour. That's pretty impressive. Honestly, that's pretty impressive for a Pinto. RGD, I remember the chalet before my house, popular in Adelaide, Texas, I guess because of Lake Amistad and Big Bend NP. Okay. So you remember the chalet. Cool. Robert is saying for Michael to go check on carpart.com. Okay. That could be a good option there. I don't know. Haven't tried that. Roy, my 65 Mustang Coupe got 120 downhill. Okay. Not to brag, because it's not worth bragging about, but my 67 Plymouth Belvedere, I got pulled over doing 128 miles an hour. Yeah. 128 miles per hour on bias ply tires in Virginia in December. No. Yeah. It was December, January of, it was 85, 86. I don't remember if it was actually still 85 or it was early 86. Yeah. 128 miles an hour. Not a good thing to do. Lightning Rod, modern technology is crazy, as you said. 2.7 liter twin turbo on a new F-150. 2.7 liters. Crazy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, honestly, I wouldn't mind putting one of those in a Mustang. I wouldn't. If I could, if I could get a hold of one, I would want to try it. Why not? Why not? Yeah. Yeah. 128 wasn't a good day. RGD, I remember the Chalet being popular around Del Rio, Texas, I guess. Okay. Lake Amistad and Big Bend. Okay. Ish. 120 miles per hour. Gangsta. Yeah. Well, I've talked about this before. That car, it had a 150 Speedo in it because it was a GTX clone. They had put the Speedo in out of the, they put the GTX stuff on this 67 Belvedere. And I had bought the car when I got out of it, when I finished basic training, and when I went home, I bought the car. Now it had a 318 in it, but it was still whatever RIN was in it. I don't know, but the speedometer was accurate. I know that much. And I was driving back to Fort Benning in Georgia, and it was late at night. It was like 1 a.m. or something. And my buddy was with me. He was sleeping in the car. He was in the passenger side, or maybe he was in the back seat. I don't remember. Anyway, he was sleeping. And I was flying. There's stretches in Virginia where, there's nothing. And I was passing everything in sight. Semi trucks and it was weird. I was like, just flying. And I'd pass a semi truck and I'd have some lights flash at me, and I'm thinking, what's he flashing his lights for? Well, I ended up, I know looking down when the blue lights came on behind me. I looked down at the Speedo and it was at 128. So I may have been going faster than that prior. I don't know. But when I looked down, I saw 128. Apparently, the officer, the state trooper driving, it was a Mustang GT or whatever, the state police version, whatever. I don't know, Mustang GT. And he was pacing me. He didn't even have his lights on. He was following me, and I couldn't see him because he didn't have his lights on. And anyway, he turned on his lights, and I had been pulled over enough times to know that you need, stop and be polite and be on, whatever. So he pulls me over. I wake up my buddy, and I tell him, "Hey man, we just got." He's like, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I just got pulled over." He's like, "For what?" And I said, "Speeding." So anyway, I said, "Put your hands out the window of the car." He's like, "What?" I said, "Just put your hands out the window of the car. Trust me." Oh, so he stuck his hands out. I stuck my hands out, made sure they could see my hands. The officer still approached me with his gun drawn. Yeah, he had his gun drawn. And he looks at me, and I still had my high and tight buzz cut, Army high and tight haircut. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just trying to get back to Fort Benning. I'm coming home on leave or going back from leave, and I've got to be there by, I was having car problems. I was just making stuff up. And I said I had to be there by 6 a.m, and he's like, "You're never going to make it by 6 a.m. I was thinking, yeah, not now. So anyway, I show him my leave papers. I show him that I'm, I just finished basic training, and everything was legit, whatever. And he says, "Do you have any idea how fast you were going?" And I said, "No, sir." I'm not going to admit how fast I was going. I said, "No, I don't." And he's looking at me, and he realizes I'm a young soldier, and, I'm not really doing anything wrong. I'm just speeding. And this is Virginia now. Okay. where you would normally get arrested for this. Um, he looks at my stuff, looks at me, looks at everything, all the paperwork on. Sees, we're not making up the story about being in the military and all that. And he looks at me and he gives me this look and he says, "I had you doing 75." And I was like, "Yes, sir. I think that sounds right." Anything over 75, I was going to jail. Just tell you that right now. And so he wrote me a ticket for 75 miles an hour. And I said, "Now, okay, how do I pay this?" And he said, "You get back to base. There's information on the back there. You just send the check back and you're good to go." Okay, I'll do that. And he's like, "No, enough with this speeding." He like scolded me about being stupid. So lo and behold, I get through Virginia, uh, get into South Carolina or North Carolina, South Carolina, and we get into Georgia. And I ended up being stupid again. I didn't get pulled over, thankfully, but I did end up, the Toyota MR2s were popular at that point, and this little Toyota MR2 pulled up. He passed me. He like, and I was, "Oh yeah." So I'm driving this big land yacht, 67 Plymouth, and I passed this Toyota MR2, and he's like, "Oh yeah." So he shoots past me, and and finally, I don't know how fast I was going. We were moving. I mean, we were well over 100 miles an hour, and the little MR2 comes up beside me. And he's like, finally gets past me, and I was like, "Okay, I'm not going to mess with him anymore. I'm done. I got to quit being stupid. I got to quit being stupid in this car." And so I calmed down after that. And then I ended up, I got back to Fort Benning, got on base, and it was probably a month later. I had another speeding or warning or something on the base, and I was like, "You know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't drive this car." And that's when I traded it on my 72, my 72 Chevy 4x4 that I had. So anyway, things we do when we're young and dumb, right? Yeah, you must have had your wallet out for that one. Yeah, it would have been like jail time. It would have been jail time had he really followed through. Dawn, Betsy made it to 134.2. Awesome. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Dawn, that's like driving 80 miles per hour on the freeway, dodging parked cars. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I was pretty stupid. Ray, that's an awesome story, Barry. Thank you. I ended up really, I had a problem with getting tickets when I was in the military. I was all getting all kinds of speeding tickets, and I had one for reckless driving, and which was ridiculous. More on that later. But being in the military and being stationed at Fort Benning and having a Pennsylvania license, it never really mattered. It didn't show up, like it didn't transfer back to Pennsylvania at that time. It wasn't like a database that covered the whole country. So you'd end up, the points didn't matter, right? They didn't show up. And then I actually went back, when I went back to Pennsylvania, I ended up, I'll just tell you this. Well, no, I won't tell you. We'll tell you that later. But I ended up back in Pennsylvania, and I got a speeding ticket every year for like 3 years in a row in March or April. And I ended up, I had to go to, like, well, I'd gotten these speeding tickets, which was enough for me to lose my license. But I'd been hired by Delta to go to work when I got my last one. And the officer, I was like freaking out because I knew I was in big trouble. And the officer said, "Look, as soon as you get to Georgia, just trade in your Pennsylvania license for a Georgia license, and you're good to go. It like resets everything." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." So that's what I did, and it did. It reset everything. So I was lucky about that. Rick, you're not alone, Barry. Yeah, yeah. I know. We all did a lot of stupid things. Rick, sorry I'm late tonight. Got distracted with, well, just being confused and overwhelmed. Well, I'm glad you're here, but I'm probably going to end up calling it quits here in a couple minutes. My throat is starting to go. Ray, with my Mustang, I was racing another Mustang, 66 and 35, put me in jail. I never had a problem getting a ticket. Yeah. Uh, yeah. It's easy to get it. You know, I'll to be honest. I drive that little Honda Fit, and that car is a lot of fun to drive. It's not super fast relative to like a Challenger or whatever, but boy, can it take a turn. That little car sticks when you take a turn. And I've done my food deliveries, and I get on some little back road. Granted, I'm not flying. I'm not doing 100 miles an hour, but 60 or 70, and all of a sudden I see a sign that says 35. Oh, that's not good. I might get in trouble for this if they had one of those remote photo deals. So I got to be careful. Lightning Rod, next episode, stupid stories. Better block a few days. I'm sure we'll have a few stories. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've got tons of stupid things that I've done. Doyle, the craziest ticket I ever got was improper takeoff from a start position in my 72 Demon 340, peeling tires from a stop sign. Yep. Yeah. They'll get you for that. You know, it's how was it? One time I remember my dad, where was it at? He got pulled over for something. And I think I was in a car with him, and he didn't squeal the tires, but he launched hard when he left after talking to that cop. And the cop pulled him over again, I think. And he's like, what did I do wrong? And he said, well, you were going too fast. And he said, no, I never went over the speed limit. Well, you were going fast to get fast or something like that. My dad said, I never went over the speed limit. What are you bothering with me for? And the cop didn't have he couldn't like give him a ticket because they could have done you for like exhibition of speed. But normally I think you have to like spin the tires and stuff like that. But he just launched hard, never, he didn't get a ticket. Ish, 98 Chrysler Sebring convertible did 120 miles in Florida. I was impressed. Yeah. I mean, 120, that's moving. Ray, exhibition of speed is what they call that here. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, again, my throat's starting to go. I can feel it. So I'm going to have to call it a night. I have a video coming out. I'll probably put it out tomorrow. Basically, a video on my Honda Fit. I put on brake pads and fixed the sway bar end links. So I'll get that put out. I'm not sure what my next video will be. I'm waiting on some stuff to show up on the Mustang. I ordered some switches that I'm going to put in for the fans. So I'm going to get those put in. I'm also investigating whether I'm going to use the thermostat that I have. I've had somebody comment that I should put in a 170 thermostat. Might do that. I did hook up my Vacuum Advance on the distributor. So I had people comment on that as well. So a couple things I'm kind of playing with right now, but we'll see how that goes. But I know at least have the Honda video out, and I may put out a few more of those this year. I've got a couple things till maybe by the end of this year. I need to put brakes on my wife's van, so I may do a video on that. Maintenance type things. But anyway, let's see. Lightning Ross has called it unsafe start. In my case, yeah, I'll bet. Dawn, contest of speed here in Oregon. Okay. All right. That'll be it. I hope everybody has a good weekend. Like I said, tomorrow, our daughter graduates from college, starts her career as a teacher. So that'll be pretty awesome. Looking forward to just getting done with it, right? But I'll be back here, assuming everything goes well. I'll be back here on Thursday at 3, and we can talk more about whatever's going on. But I want to thank you all for being here and participating. And until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.